Right now, a guy that has played in Europe, a former TFC player and a friend of mine and a friend of our show, Marco Reda. Marco, thanks for taking time.
My pleasure, Anthony. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you on. Marco, let's get right to it. When I use the word culture, I don't see it here in our country with clubs, with players, coaches, on and on. You've played in Europe, you've played in MLS. How do we instill this culture like they have in Spain and Italy, but not even in the big European countries, even like in Iceland, what they've done? How do we instill that first and foremost with our youth clubs and academies?
That's a good question. I think time might be the answer. I think if we're looking at our sport, relatively speaking to everyone else, we certainly don't have the history that some of the other countries don't. Iceland changed its culture simply by putting a bit more money into the program and through their coaching. They wanted to make sure that a lot of their that guys that were on the field or ladies were certified. So they have now certified professional coaches working at the youngest age groups. That's something that we're striving for, certainly. So coach education can be one answer. More soccer on TV, more soccer on the playground. I think we've certainly got to give it time. When I was growing up, people used to say, perhaps when your kids, Marco, are growing up, soccer will be taken seriously in this country. So time will tell. Time will tell.
Marco, how do we change the culture of the parents? God bless them. They sign the checks. They travel everywhere with their kids because they care and they love their young boy or young girl. But the culture also needs to change in this country and in this province with parents where they believe their kid is going to be the next Messi, Ronaldo, on. And they need to let the proper coaches who have the proper licenses, like you mentioned, do their job. How do we change that culture?
I think that's done by creating standards at the youngest age groups. I know in our province we've started at U12, U13 to have standards, coaching standards. At the high performance level, academy level, but perhaps we need it at younger age groups, at the 8, 9, 10 level. Parents need to be sort of educated or reminded often what the game is about, and that each player develops on their own time. And regardless of how much parents yell or persist or whatever on the sideline, that's not going to rush a kid into developing into a better soccer player. If anything, it's going to hinder the player's progress.
Marco, how do we change the culture also in the boardroom? Let's be honest, there's a lot of politics, a lot of garbage that goes on in there of people that know nothing about the game that are making some big decisions, whether it's with youth clubs, whether it's at the province, whether it's at the national level, people that are making the wrong decisions that know nothing about the game. How do we change that culture? Do we need to start instituting that people that have a background, whether as a former coach, a former player, are able to sit on these type of boards?
Yeah, certainly. I think you just got to professionalize the game a little bit more. I mean, we need professional people making decisions at the top. Volunteers are great. I think there's certainly a place for them in the game, but at the board level, making decisions, and a lot of them, the trouble is, are making decisions in regards to the technical side of the game. And putting their foot probably where it shouldn't be. They need to give the technical people some breathing room, and if they hire someone who's qualified at the technical level, then they just need to pretty much stay out of their way, support them with everything they can, and have the person they hired do the job they were hired to do.
Marco, maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't, but I'd like to hear your 2 cents on it anyway. How do we change the culture amongst our government officials where, let's be honest, when the game of hockey here in our country is still number one, anything that needs to be done, whether it's at a local rink, whether it's for an Olympics, whether it's for a World Cup of Hockey, on and on, all the government officials are on board. All the government officials are doing whatever they can because it is the sport of hockey. We are also taxpayers in the game that we love. We are the #1 youth sport and have been for the last, I would say, at least 15 to 20 years. How do we change that culture?
I think the easiest way is to have a bit of success first. Hockey's had success. We've had, world champions, Olympic champions. We've got the best league in the world in our backyard. We're not there with soccer yet. So we haven't had enough success to sort of say, well, this is where we should be as a country, and why aren't we? I think it takes some leadership at the top of our game, to be honest. The OSA, CSA, other governing bodies of soccer, to sort of get the right people in a room to say, what exactly do we need to do next? How do we get better? I don't know if we have a goal in mind. What is our goal as a country? Is it to get players a scholarship? Is it to get players to go to a World Cup? We say things, but I'm not sure a plan has been put in place for that goal to be reached, whatever it is.
You're bang on, Marco. Lastly, before we let you go, Marco, let's talk about the culture and how we ingrain that culture in the player on an everyday life here in Ontario and in Canada compared to that one of a South American player, an African player, a European player, on and on. How do we do that? How do we get that North American kid away from playing those video games every single day after school or every single weekend instead of, really concentrating on all sorts of the game, not just the training aspect, but watching games, as you said, the nutrition aspect, the mental aspect. How do we get that culture ingrained in the young players here?
That's a good question. I think one of the main things we need to do is when kids are 6, 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, our major responsibility is to make sure that kid falls in love with the game and that they become passionate about the game. If they're passionate about something, then they'll want to do it more often, not just 3 days a week when their parents drive them to training. I think that's one of a major issue why we're not developing world-class stars is because our kids think soccer is just things they do 3 days a week. Kids aren't playing on the great playground. I know myself because I'm a teacher. I don't see kids playing foot hockey like we used to do back in the day. So there's not a culture for that. I think we've lost a bit of that. Kids aren't playing as much as they used to. Regardless of whatever sport they have a passion for. But yeah, they need to go to games. They need to see games. Kids are a lot luckier than when I was growing up. We just had Soccer Saturday on Saturday mornings. Now they can watch 8, 9, 10 games a week on TV. They've got a professional local team that they can go out to see. So that's all part of it. But I think it really starts at the young age groups. We've got to sort of get these kids to fall in love with the game. And if they have a passion for it, then they'll want to do it the rest of their lives.
Marco, outstanding. In 30 seconds or less, I know that you're getting ready to watch a playoff game with TFC, the first one in club history. I've predicted a TFC Montreal Impact Eastern Final. Your thoughts? Do you think they can get to the Eastern Final or even to the MLS Cup Final?
I think a first-round playoff series against Montreal and Toronto would be great. I think it'd be great for Canada. I think it'd be something that they can promote, certainly. I'll be at the game for sure if it's hosted in Toronto. I'm not sure. I think they can get by the first round, but I'm not sure if they can go all the way.
Well, it's been a successful year nonetheless for Jovinko and TFC getting into the playoffs, so it's going to be great to watch our first playoff game in TFC history. You were a part of it in year one, so great of you to take time, get better, and we really appreciate your insight, Marco.
Thank Thanks, Anthony.
That is Marco Reda, former TFC player and a guy that is no stranger to the game. He has played overseas. He's a teacher now, but he's a great communicator with kids. I've seen this with my own eyes and heard it with my own ears with my son a couple weeks way back in the summer. He is really the real deal. These are the type of guys we need involved in Canada. Marco Reda, former TFC player.